Hi and welcome to this video, which is part 2 on removing and replacing the rear bush on a Renault Laguna. Now in last week's video I did the offside and I managed to snap the tool because I over tightened it. So for this side I'm having to use a standard M12 thread that is not strong enough for the job. So I then try and assist that by using a hammer, which was fine when it came to removing the bush, but when installing the bush I don't advise using a hammer, as you'll see in this video. So a bit of a disaster really. The weather was cold, windy, rainy, and I was tired, so things didn't quite go to plan. But anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy this video and thank you for watching. So hopefully you'll enjoy watching this one, and thank you. Now in last week's video I did the offside, wait for that truck to pass. Do that again. I'm having to use standard M12 thread from a builder's yard, and hiya. Hello. Yeah. Right. Fitting the rear bush. Now in last week's video I was doing the offside and the snap through. Hi and welcome to this video, which is on the Renault Laguna. Hi and welcome to this video, which that's just too noisy. It's too noisy. Try again. It's just again removing and installing a bush on the Renault Laguna, and my advice is don't use a hammer and don't over tighten the tool thread. So hope you enjoy this one. This is a disaster. So since I've snapped the thread, my first job is to find a replacement for that snapped high tensile M12 thread, but sadly I only have some standard threading. So I'm expecting the original thread would have been a grade 10.9 or possibly a 12.9 for strength. And this is just standard thread I bought years ago from a builder's merchants, so it's probably quite weak. So what I'm going to do is allow for 3 attempts on this, that the rod might snap 3 times, but as long as it gets the bush in the end. So we'll just crack on with this. You've got to keep watching those rubber bushes at the bottom keep falling out. It's like a rubber sleeve there. So anyway, so let's cut this, and this rod has been divided into 3 effectively, and hopefully this will still get the job done. Like I said, I don't know what the tensile strength of this rod is. I mean, if I also lubricate the bush, then hopefully it would be okay. The strain would be when trying to remove the old bush though. So with the wheel nuts already loosened and the front wheels chocked, we need to release the electric handbrake as done in the first video. I will show this briefly again though. So we need to insert the key cards and then just make sure the ignition is on, like so, and then it's a case of pulling the lever and pushing the button at the same time. You'll have an alarm go off and it will actually say the handbrake's now off. There's also a backup or an emergency handbrake release lever that's between the 2 seats in the central storage unit. So now to jack the car up and remove the Nearside road wheel as we did for the other side. So with the wheel nuts already broken loose, we just need to remove them, and that's a 17mm socket. So I'm just making sure they're fully loose there before I jack the car up. And then what I'm going to do is do a bit of juggling around here, because I need an axle stand under there instead of the jack, because I need that jack on my rear axle. So I'm just going to very carefully swap that over and put an axle stand under there. Although I'm actually holding the car there on technically the not correct point for lifting the car, but it seemed to do okay. So I'm just going to get my trolley jack there now to support the axle, like so, and then I can fully remove the wheel nuts and remove the road wheel. So it's all looking quite nice and clean in there. So we'll have a photo now, just to show all those parts. Obviously it's the same as the other side, but just to re-mention, so there's the rear axle in blue, the ABS cable we need to remove, and the axle mounting bracket containing the rubber bush is in yellow. And if we take a little close-up look of the bush, there it is, that's what we've got to remove. And I'll just highlight the outer edge of that bush that will be coming out. So we can now unbolt the rear shock absorber and unclip that ABS sensor wiring. So using an 18mm socket, we can now unbolt the shock absorber and free that from the housing. And it does appear the weather is starting to pick up, which is not ideal. So the bolt is quite tight, so you probably need a breaker bar for this, and just work it backwards and forwards, and then it will start to come free. So the wind is picking up and the tarpaulin is about to attempt to take off. More worryingly, the camera could have gone over. So we need to try and tighten things up a little bit. So working on a car in the cold and wind really isn't my thing. And total respect to those mechanics that work in any weather and in anybody's driveway. But anyway, back to the car now. So that's our bolt out. So that is now free to come away. And then mark the relative position with paint of the mounting plate to the vehicle floor. Then remove the 4 bolts securing the rubber bush and the bracket. So I'll show a quick photo here of the bracket and the bush once it's actually removed from the car. So with a 16mm socket, so we use a 6 point for 3 of the bolts, and for that bush bolt it's slightly different, it's a 12 point. So here we are with our standard 16mm. So we just get all these loosened like so, and then what we'll do is swap sockets to the 12 point for the long central bolt on the bush. Now I am going to cheat because I'm getting a bit tired and cold, and use some air tools here. And also the advantage of the air tool, especially on this bolt, which always seems to get stuck, is that I can just keep winding the bolt up and down gradually so that I don't force it out. So normally you'd spray a bit of lubricant on, wind it back in, and then keep doing that until it comes out nice and free. And this one is a little bit similar, and there it is. So that's the bracket off now, and we can see the bush. Okay, so taking a quick look at the bush removal press tool, which has now snapped. So like I said, the bolt in this now is actually snapped. So this is the set before it snapped, and just showing you the different parts. The central part we use in both instances of installing and removing. So that's for pushing the bush in, and that one's for pushing the bush out. And that operates with a 21mm socket. Now I highly recommend you use a torque wrench and do not exceed 100 Newton meters unless you want to snap the thread like I did. So also note that when the bushes were new we had an oval and a round one. We are now working with the oval one, which is for the near side, because the other one has already been installed in the previous video. So that's the set. So then, removing the old bush on the left hand side of the car, which is the near side here in the UK. And here's a quick photo to show the setup for removing the bush. And notice that your thread will be longer than the one in this picture. So what we can do now is just pop this ABS cable out, because if we start dropping the axle we're going to snap that. It'd probably be wise to actually remove that cable before undoing the bolts on the axle, because if you did make that mistake you would then have to change the ABS sensor as well, which would be rather annoying. So you will note that this bush is the one with the oval hole and is the near side one. Now I did notice this bush actually almost looks like it's fallen apart. Now as I start to push it, the rubber parts was actually coming away from the outer housing like so, and we've got the outer case is now left in the axle. So whether that was the cause of the banging and it was going up and down, I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll leave this to soak with some WD-40 or plus gas if you've got it, and then I'll get the tool ready for removing the shell that's still left in there. So this is with my standard thread, which is probably not very strong. So I'll just show you there that the part we'll be using is the out piece, so you can see what that one looks like. So I'm going to tighten that up. Now I mean this should actually come out quite easily, but what I also thought was if I tap it at the same time, so as I tighten it and just gradually tap it on the tool, it's going to take the strain off the bolt thread, thereby hopefully avoiding it snapping, which actually worked quite well. The only problem was it didn't work as well when it came to putting the bush in, as you'll see later on. So that's come out lovely, no snapped thread, everything's good. So we've still got the threads for the insertion process, and there's our housing. Okay, so we'll give that a nice little clean up there, so that we haven't got any rust or anything that will hinder the new bush going in. I'm just going to sort of spray that with a bit of WD-40 to clean it as such. So that's now ready for the new bush. So on to fitting the new bush. And here's a quick photo showing the setup for pushing the new bush in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a bit of silicone lubricant on here, just to minimise the strain on the force thread of the tool. And I'm also going to put some on the bush itself, and hopefully I'm doing anything to try and minimise snapping the threads. So I'm also going to start tapping it with a hammer, which in hindsight I would not advise you do. I mean, it didn't seem to cause any issues here unless it was actually tapping it with the hammer that has shaken things up, which caused that plate to come off later on. But anyway, so we've got the insertion on there on the top. Now what you do have to keep watching is the plastic sleeve keeps coming out like it has now. You can hear me having a little bit of a paddy there. So there's the sleeve, so try and make sure that goes back in. Definitely doing a lot of huffing and puffing on this one. Right, so that doesn't go in very well, does it? So eventually we get the cup in position, like so, Our threads in there, so we can now start the process of pushing the new bush in. And as you can see, it doesn't need to go very far. I'm just putting a glove on, and the reason for the earmuffs is because I plan to tap the top of the tool with a hammer. Again, thinking I'm going to ease the tension on the non-tensile bolt thread, because I am so fearful of this snapping, and also when it snaps it's actually extremely loud. Now the problem with hitting the tool was I thought it actually went onto the shoulder of the bush, but in fact by hitting it something else happened. Just to add to the fun of the day, the rain is coming and we've got a broken plate. As you can see, I'm not overly chuffed with this now. We snapped the thread on the other side, and on this side we've broken the top of the bush. So definitely pretty upset. So yeah, it's spot welded there in two places. So it's going to make putting this in a little bit more tricky. Right, so have a little break. So now to refitting the rear axle. So in another somber mood, because we've now got a broken bush, we need to try and line this axle into the approximate position by pulling it forward and trying to get it level. And you might find it easier to get it actually level using a bottle jack as well on the back of the axle, just to try and twist it so it's dropping forwards, or dropping down at the front so it goes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the shock absorber back in, because that will obviously help support things as well. So for that it's an 18mm socket, and tighten that up, and we'll talk that later. So we've got to take our plates now, and in theory line that up with the paint markings that you should have done on the car before you removed it, so that hopefully the bracket goes back in the same position. Oh, nice little bit of water there to cool me down. So we'll just wind this up now into position. So it is starting to take its toll on me. Lots of huffing and puffing, but hopefully that's now in position. So what we can do is use the 12-point socket now and just pop that central bolt in. Now I actually had one hell of a job trying to get this to line up now. It took me about half an hour to get that to line up. So I'm feeling really quite exhausted from what should have been a rather simple job. Okay, time for a sleep, I think. There we go. Those mats are nice and soft. Okay then, I think this is a power nap. Come on, let's get back, come on. It's in there now. So we've got a bit of a loose exhaust heat shield there, which needs to be sorted out. Another small job. But things are back together now. So the hard part is all over. So all we've got to do now is reach for our torque wrench and start to torque things up properly. So we'll start with 80 Newton meters for those 4 mounting bolts underneath the car. So I'm going to start with the 12 points for the bush bolt, the central bush bolt. So let's get our click. There it is. And then I can swap over to a 6-point socket for the remaining 3. Like so. So that's actually all done. The bush is in position. So we do need to torque the suspension parts, and that's 105 Newton meters for the top of the shock absorber. I think the bottom's also 105 if you had removed that, but we didn't. So then just clip the ABS cable back into position, like so. Okay, and then we can start putting the wheel back on. So now to refit the road wheel. So just before I put the road wheel on, I'll give this brake disc a quick clean, just in case any grease did get onto it while I've been working away. Okay, so let's get that bottle jack out of the way now and bring in our road wheel. So I'm just going to put one of the bolts holes at the top, make it a bit easier to line up, like so. So where's the hole there? There it is. So with a 17mm socket we can pop our bolts back in, and then we'll just spin those in quickly, like so. Dog's looking at something over there. She's not moved at all. Oh, she's off now. Right then, so we just need to get our axle stands back and gradually lower the car down. We'll run round to the other side, lower it down over there, and the car's back on the ground. So we do need to torque the wheel nuts, and that's 105 Newton meters. So we'll get those done. Okay, so the car is back together. So I'm getting excited now as it's nearly home time. So we can take all this tarpaulin down now. That semi-worked. Didn't work as well as I was hoping. I should have tried to have done like a cocoon and stopped that wind coming in and the rain. Because it did allow rain onto my lighting, which wasn't great. Thought I might have lost my lights at some point.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Oh, bless. Off she goes. Right then, so we've just got to park the car now, and I can get indoors, have a shower and warm up, because this has been quite a cold and windy day. There we go. So hopefully the wife will be happy now. The bushes have been changed and it should be a bit quieter now when driving over those potholes. So to conclude the video, here's a bit of a close-up of the bushes. So I thought it might be worth just having a quick look at these bushes, and I'm sure my wife would be interested to have a look at them as well, because as that car was going over the potholes and banging, which she kept telling me about for quite a while, at least she knows she was right. I sort of said, well, the bushes have been changed not long ago. It can't be the bushes. But since installing the new bushes, I must say, there is no more banging from the rear axle. So it definitely was these that was at fault. So whether it was the one where it was come away from the outer housing, I'm unsure. Because I mean, they are bolted in, so you wouldn't think they'd better move that much. And here's the infamous thread that I over tightened. So that's what it looks like. It's a very hard metal, that is. You can tell it's been hardened. But that took a hell of a lot of strain, that did. They are very strong. I mean, when I think how long that had actually been seated correctly and it still took me turning it, that was quite something. So the other thing I wanted to know is just how easy is it for these metal plates to pop off? Just out of interest. So let's have a look. Yes, they're not on there that tight. So I think any banging around with a hammer, you do risk these plates popping off. I mean, it's back on the car as it is now, with the loose plate as it were, and everything seems to be okay. So I think they're only spot welded just to keep it in location more than strength. So since it's back on the car, it seems to be okay. Fingers crossed. So anyway, so that's the two bushes, the old ones. And you've been watching Replacing Nearside Bush on a 2007 Renault Laguna 2. And thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you repair the bushes on your Renault Laguna. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in November 2021, and I can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Coats and Gators.